Whenever people talk about the greatest platformers on the PS2, it's usually the same names that come up. Sly Cooper, Ratchet Clank, and Jak Daxter. I honestly don't blame them. Those games are classics for a reason. But there's one game that never seems to get the same level of attention. Ty the Tasmanian Tiger. Growing up, the only real experience that I had with Ty was those old McDonald's kiosks. And Chrome Studios, the guys behind this game, were pretty confident in it. They had commercials where Ty literally puts Crash and Spyro in the hospital, which is a pretty bold way to announce that you're entering the mascot wars. But after finally sitting down and playing through the full game after all of these years, I wanted to ask the one question. Was Ty the Tasmanian Tiger actually a good game? The game centers around, surprise, Ty the Tasmanian Tiger. You know, the title of the game. Now, the story isn't nearly as in-depth as the other titles we just talked about, but honestly, I think that's okay for the first entry into the series. The game starts off with the villain Boss Cass using 5 magical talismans to banish all the Tasmanian tigers to a place called the Dreaming. But because we need a reason for the adventure to begin, things don't exactly go according to plan. The talismans are scattered across Australia, and Ty and his mates have to track down all 5 of them to bring back his family. Now, this might sound like a completely ridiculous plot, and honestly, it kind of is. But that was the charm of these games back in the day. They didn't always need some deep, complicated story. They were just wild, creative ideas where anything could happen. From here, we're dropped straight into the main hub world of the game, Rainbow Cliffs. This area acts as the central point of your journey. There are portals available to go to each level, each with their own individual collectibles. But the main one that we need to progress is the Thunder Egg. You get these for finishing levels, helping NPCs, and various other things. Ty has all of the staples that you would expect from a 3D platformer. He can run, jump, explore the world, but the unique gimmick here is definitely his boomerangs. It's not just a projectile either, they can also be used in a variety of ways, from taking out enemies to helping you glide across gaps, swim through water, and interact with the environment. They also have a really satisfying sound effect, which makes just running around spamming these things really enjoyable. As you progress through the game, you can collect golden cogs hidden throughout each level and trade them to unlock new boomerangs with their own unique abilities. You have weapons like the multi-rang, which lets you throw out multiple boomerangs at once, the electric rang, and even the zoomerang, which is basically a sniper rifle. Unfortunately, while these boomerangs are a really creative idea, the game doesn't always give you enough interesting enemies to use them against. Most enemies can be defeated in just one hit, meaning a lot of these unique weapons feel like they're not being pushed to their full potential. The most frustrating enemy for me were the lizards with the cricket bats, where you have to use Ty's bite attack instead of your boomerangs. They're not difficult enemies, but they definitely stand out as one of the more annoying encounters in the game. The controls in Ty are also something that took me a bit of time to adjust to. They're extremely responsive, almost too responsive at times. Ty can turn on a dime, and when you first start playing, that movement feels a little jarring because it's almost like there's no weight behind him. The jumping is also slightly floaty, and when you combine that with the very snappy movement, Ty can feel a little unusual to control at first. It almost feels like he's missing that sense of momentum that you get from other platformers. That being said, once you spend more time with the game, it does become something that feels more natural. As for the platforming itself, it's solid here. The game does a good job of making you use your different boomerangs in creative ways to solve puzzles and reach new areas, and thankfully nothing felt too overused or frustrating. The level design is also another area where Ty really shines. The game does a great job of taking advantage of Australia's unique environments, taking us from the sandy outback to lush green rainforests and everything in between. Some of these areas were genuinely memorable to me. Even though I only played this game briefly as a kid, I instantly recognized certain sections like the swimming levels and the water slides found throughout the rainforest areas. That's a pretty impressive thing for a game to achieve, especially for one that I haven't played in I don't know how many years. The structure of the game is fairly straightforward. Each new section of the hub world opens up 3 new levels. Your goal is to collect 17 Thunder Eggs in each area to progress. Once you collect enough, you're rewarded with a boss fight. And honestly, the boss fights were a really refreshing change of pace compared to a lot of modern games. There's no giant tutorial popping up telling you exactly what to do, or your sidekick telling you where to shoot. You're just thrown into the fight and you have to figure it out by yourself. Some of them genuinely took me a bit of time to work out, especially the shark boss. boss, but it was actually really satisfying figuring it out for myself. After defeating the boss, you're rewarded with a talisman, and then it's on to the next set of levels. That being said, the level design is a bit hit and miss here. Some areas are really well laid out and incredibly memorable, while others feel much larger than they need to be. The snow levels and the swimming sections are really fun to explore, but when you're trying to find every collectible, some of the bigger maps start to become a bit of a chore. I found myself relying heavily on the in-game map to figure out where I needed to go, and I think that's a sign that some of these areas may have been a little bit too large. The game also throws a ridiculous amount of collectibles at you. Every level has bilbies to find, hundreds of opals to collect, golden cogs, thunder eggs, and picture frames. Now, if you were a huge fan of this game back in the day, I can completely understand why that would be a positive. More content equals more reasons to keep playing. But as a first-time player, I did start to feel a little overwhelmed at times, and it felt more like a checklist than an adventure. Thankfully, the game only requires those 17 thunder eggs per area to progress, so you never actually have to collect everything. Because of that, I would say that this isn't a huge negative, but it's something definitely worth mentioning. Of course, we also have a few less than great missions sprinkled throughout the game. The two that immediately come to my mind are the hog riding sections and the turret missions. These moments definitely feel like they were added to mix things up, but they don't really reach the same quality as the rest of the game. Thankfully, they only appear a couple of times and they're usually pretty short, so they never become a major issue. More of just a small irritant in an otherwise solid level structure. Moving into the atmosphere of the game, this is where Ty really captures that 2000s charm. The voice acting is definitely a mixed bag though. There are moments that genuinely made me laugh, but there's also quite a few scenes where the delivery is pretty rough, and some of these lines come across as unintentionally cringy.
Beauty, butler, bonza, I got one!
One character that I actually really enjoyed though was Murray the Cockatoo, who basically acts as the game's narrator throughout the game. He's essentially an Aussie boomer trying to make sense of video games, the world around him, and everything happening in the story. And I think it works surprisingly well. He has a lot of personality and fits perfectly with the tone of the game. A lot of the other side characters don't quite hit the same mark, with some pretty questionable voice delivery that can make certain moments feel a little awkward. At this point, I can only assume that Murray must have eaten up the entire voice acting budget. And I can't talk about the atmosphere without mentioning the music, because some of these tracks are genuinely fantastic. They're incredibly catchy and have that classic 2000s platformer feel. I would put some of these songs right up there with the big three, Jak, Ratchet, and Sly, when it comes to memorable platformer tracks. So after going back and playing Ty the Tasmanian Tiger after all of these years, is it worth revisiting? Honestly, I think it is. Ty definitely has its flaws. The controls can feel a little strange at first, some of the levels are much bigger than they need to be, and the amount of collectibles can become overwhelming, and some of the side missions and voice acting haven't aged particularly well. But despite all of that, there's something about this game that just works. It has so much personality, the Australian setting is unique, the boomerang mechanics are genuinely fun, the worlds are memorable, and the soundtrack is honestly way better than it has any right to be. I think that's what separates Ty from a lot of other platformers in this era. It might not have the same level of polish as games like Jak, Ratchet, or Sly, but it has its own identity. It feels like a game made by a team that genuinely wanted to create something fun and different. For me, Ty the Tasmanian Tiger is a really solid first entry into the series, but it's not perfect, and I don't think it reaches the heights of the PS2 platforming giants, but it's a charming adventure that still holds up surprisingly well. If you grew up with this game, I think there's a lot to love here, and if you missed it back in the day, I definitely think it's worth giving it a chance, especially with the HD remaster. But what do you guys think? Do you love Ty, or is it just one of those games that never really clicked with you? Let me know down in the comments below, and I'll see you in the next one.